Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining on Zoom and live on Facebook. I'll be looking at the comment section in the Zoom chat box as well as on Facebook. So feel free to make yourself heard, questions, comments, feedback, and we'll have a wonderful discussion. This is continuing the story. Actually, today we complete the story and finish the book, the first book of the Torah, the book of Bereshit, Genesis. So we complete the story, and this kind of brings to an end a complete era. So we're going to talk a little bit about the story and then some lessons that we learned from it, including two important qualities for any endeavor in life. So that is going to be today's discussion. So starting with the story, we have basically all of the characters who we know from the Torah up until this point. Everyone who we're talking about, they all passed away in this last part of this book, Genesis. So this includes Yaakov, who is the patriarch of the family. He passes away, and as well as Yosef, who is the viceroy of Egypt. He's the second in command. He was the one who invited his whole family to Egypt, cared for them, and gave them everything that they needed. And not just him, but all of his brothers. You know, the generation comes, a generation goes, and they were all passing away. And the story that we're going to talk about this week is the beginning of the story is Yaakov making his last wish and his final words that come after that wish. So first he calls Yosef, who is the most influential of his 12 sons, and he makes a very important request from Yosef. And what he says to Yosef is that, I want you to promise me that you're going to bury me in Israel. He wanted to be buried in Hebron, in Israel, in the same place where his wife Leah was buried, in the same place where his parents and his grandparents were buried. So the cave of Machpelah, this is where Yaakov wanted to be buried. And he made Yosef swear that he would carry out this last request and actually make it happen. Of course, Yosef promised, and in the end, Yaakov, in fact, was buried where he wished to be buried in Israel. Now, before Yosef passed away, after he made this request, now it was time to say his last words to his family, to his children. And so he gathered all of his children, he gathered his family, and he wished to share something with them. And I'm going to share my screen for a moment because if you look at the text, it's just a few lines, very interesting. And we're going to see what Yaakov wished to share with his children. So this is the verse. We have the text. The first part is the pasuk, it's the verse. And the second part is the commentary. Rashi, a very famous commentary, lived about 1,000 years ago. So it says like this: Yaakov called for his sons and said, gather, and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. What is this meaning? What is this a reference to? So the commentary Rashi tells us a little bit more information. It says, quotes the words, and I will tell you. It says like this: he attempted to reveal the end, but the Shekhinah, which means the divine presence, withdrew from him. So he began to say other things. Okay, so Yaakov wanted to share, the end of time, what would be, and somehow the divine wisdom and this divine inspiration that Yaakov always had suddenly left him, and so he was not able to share the secret that he was planning to share. It disappeared from him. So what was it that Yaakov wanted to say? What does it mean, the end of days? So the end of days is the era of Mashiach. when there'll be a time of final redemption, a time when there'll be no more pain and suffering, no more exile, and this is a time of peace and tranquility, and only good things. It's basically when the world reaches a state of perfection. And this is, of course, what we work towards to every day. So Yaakov wanted to share with his children when this time would be. And then suddenly it disappeared from his mind. The divine inspiration left him, and he no longer had the information. He was not able to share this unbelievable secret. So the question is, I'd like to get involved a little bit deeper in this and understand and analyze what actually transpired here, what actually occurred, and what was the core of the matter here. So firstly, why did Yaakov wish to reveal the secret? Why did he want to tell them when the end of days would be, when the time of Mashiach would come? And that's question number one. Question number two is, why, in fact, was he prevented from doing so? So what was the reason for wanting to share the secret? And secondly, what was the reason that he was prevented from doing so? Now, if you think about it, more than 3,000 years passed since then, since that time, since this conversation that Yaakov had with his children. More like 3,500 years already passed, and Mashiach has not come. So if you think about it, it would not be very encouraging for Yaakov to share this secret with his children. Imagine he calls them around his bedside and he says, "Listen, family, I have a secret to tell you. Good days are coming. It's going to be in about 3,500 years." That would be the biggest discouragement. What was Yaakov's purpose for wanting to share the secret? He obviously had the information. He knew it was so far away. What was he thinking? The commentaries explain that the exodus from Egypt, so the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt for 210 years. And then was the exodus. They came out, they were redeemed. Moshe took them out, with miracles, with great miracles. And it was an unbelievable event, and it was an unbelievable. Today we mark it with the holiday of Pesach, celebrating the Exodus, the redemption from exile and from the slavery. Now the commentaries point out that this redemption and this Exodus had the potential to be the final redemption, right? So of course this was a wonderful end to the slavery and to pain and suffering. But there were other exiles and there were other suffering and pain that occurred after that, later in our history. And not just for the Jewish people, for other nations and other people. So this obviously was not the final redemption. But the commentaries say that this redemption, it was supposed to be this exodus from Egypt. It was part of the plan that the Jewish people would be freed from slavery. But there actually was the potential that this shouldn't just be like a one-time redemption, and then in the future there'd be other problems and other suffering. But but at this time there was the possibility and the potential for this to be the final redemption, for this exodus to be the beginning of the era of Mashiach. So it was possible for such a thing to happen, and it was dependent on the behavior of the Jewish people, how they, whether or not they deserved it. So this, of course, is a tremendous gift that the world reaches such a state, and it doesn't come by itself. We need to purify the world and make the world a better place. It's up to us. This is what we're working towards. And the Jewish people had to work towards that, and they had to deserve it. So there was the potential that this redemption becomes the final redemption. And so this is what Yaakov had in mind. Yaakov didn't think that he was telling them something that would happen in 3,500 years. He wasn't saying, "Oh, you should know that there's going to be pain and suffering for 3,500 years." yes, of course, that would be the biggest discouragement. What Yaakov was saying was that in 200 years, 200 years is not such a long time in the story of the world and the story of history. 200 years, it could have been their, great grandchildren or great great grandchildren, people who they could imagine their own descendants, their own family. So 210 years later, Yaakov says, instead of the exodus from Egypt, this could be the final redemption. So Yaakov had in mind there should be this. He was trying to encourage them to do whatever they could to deserve and to inspire their family and their children that they should deserve that this exodus from Egypt should be the final redemption. So this is what Yaakov was thinking. Um, he was hoping for this kind of encouragement and hopefully for this to actually come true, that that only 210 years later it would be the time of Mashiach. Now, if this is what Yaakov meant, if this was his intent, then why was it taken away from him? Why was this information, why was the divine energy, the divine inspiration removed from him? Why was he prevented from sharing the secret? You would think that it might be a good idea to encourage the Jewish people in this very important way. And the answer is that what is more precious to you? You can go to the grocery store and buy a few tomatoes and have it for lunch, or you could go just outside your door and reach into the plant pot that you set up a few months earlier, and find some tomatoes that you yourself grew. What's more precious? What do you appreciate more? What do you enjoy more? So most people would say, even if the tomato might not be as perfect as the one that you might find in the grocery store, but people have a special pleasure and a special enjoyment in something that they invested themselves in. You planted that tomato, you're going to enjoy that tomato. You're not going to eat it just like any other tomato. You're going to feel like, oh, wow, this is something that I made. It's something that I did on my own. You feel much better about it. And it actually is. It is a much more significant and meaningful item, because you invested, you created, you made this happen. And the same thing is with the final redemption and with the coming of Mashiach, and turning this world into a place of peace, kindness, and godliness. Of course, the world should reach this perfect state. And this is the purpose of the world, and this is what God wants. But God also wants that it shouldn't be something that's spoon-fed to us. It shouldn't be something that's given to us and made easy for us through a shortcut, but we actually accomplish it and we actually achieve it through our own motivation and through our own inspiration and through our own energy. So not being given any head starts, not being given any tricks, not being given any easy way to do it, but in fact to accomplish the whole thing on our own. And that's what makes it so special. That's what makes it so meaningful. That's what makes it so special to us. That's what makes it meaningful to us. But also that's what makes it so special and meaningful to God, when he sees that we're doing it on our own, just like a parent helps their child become independent, right? You don't just want your child to be fed and comfortable. You want them to learn how to feed themselves, how they could take care of themselves, how they could be successful on their own. That's how God looks at us. God wants us to be successful on our own. He wants us to reach, our own achievement. And this, like a self-made success is always more appreciated and more amazing than someone who just inherited something that they did not necessarily work hard for. When something is self-made, when something is done on your own, it's much greater, much more meaningful, much more powerful. And so this is why even though Yaakov had good intentions, he wanted to help his children, encourage them, and show them that it's not so far away. It's only 200 years away. It's going to be your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. These are the people who are going to experience this. This was the encouragement, but in fact, the encouragement is in a way better without. God understood that it would be a bigger benefit to us that we should do it on our own, that we should be these self-made success stories, that we bring this final redemption, we bring the days of Mashiach through our effort and our effort alone. So that's the regarding the secret that Yaakov wanted to share. So we actually don't, till today, we don't know what he was planning to say. He immediately started saying other things. So what did he say? He gathered, imagine Yaakov gathered his whole family around. It was, I guess, around his deathbed. And this was the last opportunity, the last thing he was saying to his family. He had planned to share this unbelievable secret, so, I'm sure the room was very quiet, and I'm sure everybody was waiting to hear what are these last words that our father and grandfather, the patriarch of the family, is going to say. And so the secret left him. So what did he say instead? So Yaakov said something to each of his children. And in general, they were mostly blessings. He gave blessings to each of his children. But more than blessings, in a way, he defined what each of his children would contribute to the Jewish people. So his 12 sons later became the 12 tribes of the Jewish people, 12 tribes of Israel. And each tribe has something unique that it contributes to the Jewish people. So the blessings that Yaakov gave wasn't just blessings, but they were also a certain direction and certain emphasis on what the children possessed, what they the talents or the special gifts or the special blessings that they would have, and through this to be able to contribute to the entire Jewish people. So something, of course, there's things that we all share, but there's also the unique contribution that we each make. There's a unique contribution that we each make as an individual, but also as a tribe. Each of the 12 tribes have a certain role, and in a way this was being defined in these last words that Yaakov was saying in the blessings that he was giving. He also gave a little bit of rebuke at the same time to some who deserved it, but it was mostly blessings, and everyone received blessings. And I'd like to pay closer attention to what these blessings actually were and to talk about it a little bit. So we have many metaphors of animals that Yaakov uses to describe his children and to talk about their unique talents and contributions that they're going to make. And again, I'll share the screen. I don't have all of the text. I kind of condensed it, so we see just short examples of each of many of the 12 tribes and pieces of the blessings and the words that Yaakov used at the time. So I'm going to share my screen again. This time we're going to go to the next page number 2, and we have it here on the screen. So it's like a cub. A grown lion is Judah or Yehuda. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him? Issachar is a bony donkey lying between the boundaries. Dan will be a serpent on the road, a viper on the path, which bites the horse's heels so its rider falls backwards. Naphtali is a swift gazelle who utters beautiful words. Benjamin is a wolf. He will prey. In the morning he will devour plunder. In the evening he will divide the spoil. So there's a lot of metaphors here of using animals as the metaphor. And specifically, if we could analyze, what's going on over here. Actually, Yaakov uses two types of animals for his blessings and for his metaphors. Actually, both types, the only really two types of animals that there are. There are, wild animals, wild beasts, and also more domesticated and tame animals, right? So you have the lion, is the wild one. You also have the donkey, which is much more calm. You have the wolf, which is wild. So you have these two types of animals, and the Kabbalah gives explanation to these various metaphors, what they represent, and why Yaakov is talking about animals, and specifically these types of animals. And I'd like to share a little bit of what the Kabbalah says about these metaphors. Well, the Kabbalah says something very interesting, that wild animals represent something very powerful. Wild animals represent raw passion and love and very strong feelings, very powerful feelings that often is what drives a person and drives, many things. And then you have domesticated animals that are more tame, more relaxed, more controlled. And these tamed animals represent, submission and commitment on a very practical level to God. That's what the Kabbalah says. So the wild animals represent, this passionate love and strong feeling for God and spirituality. And the more relaxed and tamed animals represent, just like this basic, simple commitment to doing the right thing, doing what's right, and just doing mitzvahs, just doing good things without necessarily having these strong and powerful feelings. Now, of course, these two styles, these two modes, or these two moods are complete opposites. You have the strong passion on the one hand, the strong feeling, and on the other hand, you have this relaxed, controlled, more serious, more plain and more bland kind of mood. And the Kabbalah gives some more description to these two styles, to these two modes, and it gives a name for the wild animal, for the strong passion, for the powerful emotions. It calls that running. Why does it call that running? Because if you think about it, these strong feelings of love, of passion, it makes your heart race. You feel it. Your heart is pumping. You have a certain yearning, a certain desire. You want to, to escape just being alone and being yourself. You're being attracted to another person or to God. You want to be united with them. So it's like this. That's why the Kabbalah calls it running, because you're like running towards someone else or something else, and you're kind of leaving the space of just being alone, and trying to become united with someone else. And this just the strong yearning and desires, like running after something. That's why the Kabbalah calls this running. And then you have the other side. You have the submission and commitment, and the very practical side. That's called returning. And the reason it's called returning is because this is a mood of coming back to like reality and practical life, and just doing what needs to be done, and making sure everything on your agenda is checked off, and everything is taken care of, all the responsibilities. So you have the running and the returning. Running is you're running after your passion, you're running after your love, you're running after your feelings. And then the returning is like back down to reality, to making sure that you could get on with your life and not get and not not miss your your uh, your your studies or your job interview or your opportunity to actually make something of yourself and be successful. If you're just running after your emotions, you might not you might not uh, utilize opportunities that you have. Of course, things have to get done at the end of the day. And this is where we reach the understanding that actually everything we do in life, any achievement that you want to make in life, and anything that you want to get into in life needs these two qualities. So the running mode and the returning mode. So on the one hand, the wild animal running after your passion and your love, but also the domesticated animal coming back to reality and finding the practical steps that need to be taken and actually doing them. Anything in life needs these two modes and these two qualities. So take relationships, for example. Any good relationship is going to have strong emotion. If there is not strong emotion, there is no excitement, there's no desire for one another. So there has to be, in any relationship, there has to be this strong feeling of of um, of desire, of attraction, of love. There has to be this excitement. There has to be something pulling you in your heart, to the other person. But at the same time, that's not enough. That's not everything in a relationship, because sometimes that might be, if that's all you have in a relationship, the relationship could fall apart, perhaps easily, because there will always be some time that the excitement winds down, or the excitement wears off, at least temporarily for a time, because of whatever reasons that are going on. It's impossible to always have this level of excitement where you're excited, like the first time. Actually, in Jewish marriage, the secret to Jewish marriage is how to keep it fresh. But that's a whole discussion for itself. But in every relationship, there's always going to be the highs and the lows. And so if it's just following the passion, the strong emotion, which is called the running and was compared to the wild animal, where it's all from the emotion. Um, that's not enough for a relationship. A relationship also has to have this practical side. It also has to have this level of commitment, this level of loyalty, where even if something is going to happen, even if the excitement is not going to be like it was last week, the relationship is not going to fall apart, because we have this commitment, we have this trust between us, we have this understanding, and we're going to be in this together, and very soon we'll be back to the highs of what we had previously, and even higher. Hopefully the relationship will only grow. So relationship needs both sides. It needs that strong emotion, it needs that excitement, it needs that energy, it needs that desire, but at the same time it also needs that very practical side, that realistic side, where you're making a commitment on a very basic level, on a very simple level. So you have these two opposites, what the Kabbalah calls the running and what the Kabbalah calls returning. Returning is coming back to the very practical, to the reality, and to the simple. Take a business, for example. Any successful business needs a good vision. It needs a certain inspiration. It needs strong positive attitude. Very difficult to start your own business. And you need the vision. You need the excitement. You need that attitude of such strong positivity that you'll be able to withstand all of the challenges that arise, all of the stumbling blocks that arise, and they are inevitable. When you're doing something big, there's always going to be setbacks, and there's always going to be challenges. So, but the successful ideas and the successful businesses are the ones that have such a strong vision and such a strong belief that they could overcome all of these challenges. So any success story needs this strong vision, and this is what the Kabbalah calls running. So you have this powerful feeling, this powerful emotion. But of course, as we all know, this is not enough for success, because there's so much more in a business than just a vision. You could have a very nice vision, you could be very motivated and inspired, but it doesn't mean that you're actually going to be successful. And this leads us to the return, coming back to reality, so to speak, and carrying out all the steps that need to be taken on a very practical level to serve the customers, to achieve whatever steps need to be taken, all the practical steps, all the very tedious things that are boring and difficult, but that have to be done. These two components together, these two qualities together, this is what makes any story a successful story, whether it's relationship or it's studying or it's a career, whatever it might be. Of these two qualities, what the Kabbalah calls running, the passion, the love, the raw feeling and excitement, motivation, inspiration, and then also the return, what the Kabbalah calls returning, coming back to reality and making the practical steps come to fruition. Same is true, says the Kabbalah, with our relationship with God and with our role as Jewish people in the world that we live in. We have the inspirational moments, when you feel that you want to be close to God, and you want to connect, and you want to pray, and you want to Torah study, all of the nice things that you would think Judaism finds important. And you have these very inspirational moments, maybe certain times on the calendar, Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, these special times of light, special times of inspiration. And these are the inspirational moments of love and awe. This is the running, what the Kabbalah calls the running, when you have this drive from your heart, when your heart is pulling you in some way towards spirituality and towards God. And sometimes in a way you could start your day this way. You could wake up in the morning and you think to yourself, I want to start the day on the right foot. I want to maybe remove myself from the very practical things, from the mundane, from my job, from my studies. A person might think to themselves, let me focus on spirituality and holiness and God. This might be the thought process of somebody who wants to be spiritual. But in fact, just like our other examples of relationships and businesses, Judaism, our role in Judaism and in the world, and our responsibility to ourselves and to God and to the people around us, is that these inspirational moments don't remove us from the reality, but actually this translates into practical steps. So Judaism and the Torah and God, it's about having these strong feelings, because these strong feelings are important in whatever we do. But we should never think that Judaism is about removing ourselves and climbing onto a mountaintop and being spiritual means separating yourself from the mundane, from your job, from your studies, from your relationships, from your family, from your business. That's not what it is. It's about the combination of these two steps, taking the inspiration, taking the motivation, the excitement, and the connection that we feel, and channel that and turn that into the driving force behind the practical steps that we're going to take, the mitzvahs that we're going to do, that this becomes the inspiration behind everything that we do, the mitzvahs, and making this world a better place. So this is, a deeper dimension and a deeper idea of what Yaakov was sharing with his children, giving these metaphors of animals, because actually we have the different types of animals. We have the lion, we have the wild animal that represents the emotion, the strong passion, and then we have the domesticated animals like the donkey and some others that are the relaxed, simple, practical. And what Yaakov was saying was that all of the 12 tribes are teaching something to all of the Jewish people. And this lesson teaches us that we need to have this combination, the combination of the strong passion, the inspiration, the desire, and that should turn into, and that should be the driving force behind the practical steps that we are trying to take, the mitzvahs that we're trying to make, and the steps that we're trying to take to make this world a better place, a kinder place, and a more godly place. This is pretty much how the story finishes. Yaakov passes away, and then not such a long time after, Yosef also passes away, and Yosef's passing and Yosef's death is really what created the possibility and the vacuum for the slavery and for the exile to be able to begin, because as long as Yosef was alive, he was the second most powerful person in the country, the second most powerful person in Egypt. And so as long as he was alive, the Jewish people were safe. It was only after he passed away that now it became possible for the slavery to begin. And this is the transition. This is how the story goes from such a high point, from the Jewish people having such a wonderful life in Egypt, being taken care of, and all of a sudden, in the next book, in the next Torah portion, in the book of Exodus, all of a sudden the Jewish people find themselves in a terrible situation. But what gave them the power? What gave them the inspiration and the drive to continue on? What kept them going was Yosef's final words, and I'll just read them to you, because they're very powerful. And these words that Yosef said really conveyed the hope and faith that the Jewish people would hold on to for the next many years while they were suffering and in pain, in exile and slavery. They held on to these words. They held on to this hope and faith that Yosef said just before he passed away. And what Yosef said was like this. He said, "God will surely remember you and bring you up out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov." So Yosef was promising them. He was saying, the day is going to come when you will be taken out of Egypt. The day is going to come when the Exodus will happen. This is not going to go on forever. This is not going to be the end of our family. This is not going to be the end of the Jewish people. There's going to be an Exodus. It's going to come. God is going to remember you, and God is going to take you out of this land and bring you to the land that he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.